Sometimes it's not the crime itself that makes the headlines, but the absurd details that surround the crime. Picture this. 2 guys trying to pull off a burglary, but their disguises? Let's just say they didn't think it quite through. They didn't quite pull it off. The story that unfolded in Carroll, Iowa, had police officers trying to keep their composure, and the rest of us wondering what were they thinking? Welcome to Capers and Cocktails, a true crime podcast that doesn't take itself too seriously and gives you something to enjoy while you listen. The following content may be disturbing to some. Discretion is advised. If you're enjoying one of our themed cocktails, ensure you're of legal drinking age and have fun, but drink responsibly. Believe it or not, this is not a Florida man crime, but it definitely could be one. You know that I love to throw in a short little fun episode every once in a while, and this is it's one of those, yeah. Before we begin, you know that I'm going to ask, so skip forward 15 seconds if you don't want to listen. I'm looking for YouTube subscribers, so click the little subscribe button if you haven't. And podcast listeners, I'm looking for reviews. You can just give stars, you don't even have to write anything. 1 click, easy. You can help me grow the channel beyond the group we have now. I believe in you, cocktail conspirators. We can do it, si se puede, whatever language you can say that in. Anyway, that kind of shameless self-promotion calls for a drink. This week's drink required something a little bit on the nose, if you know what I mean, or maybe a little below the nose, over the nose, around the eye. Enough. It's called the Sharpie Mustache. It's a drink that combines whiskey, gin, sweet vermouth, and Grand Marnier. Lots of booze. A cocktail that, according to its creator, Cocktails Distilled, is bitter and boozy, yet dangerously drinkable. It's easy to make and a spicy and herbal treat. It's a cocktail that will definitely hit the spot. And you can find the spot in the description box or for Thirsty Thursday on social media. Just keep the Sharpie far, far away from your face, mustache or otherwise, unlike the heroes of today's caper. Carroll, Iowa is a small city located in the west central part of the state, about 90 miles northwest of Des Moines. With a population of around 10,000, it's a tight-knit community known for its friendly atmosphere and agricultural. It's a farm town. The city prides itself on being a regional hub for education, healthcare, and commerce, and also boasts landmarks like Swan Lake State Park for outdoor enthusiasts. It's like so many crimes here on Capers and Cocktails, the kind of place where you don't need to lock the door at night. On October 23, 2009, a Friday night in quiet, sleepy Carroll, Iowa, 2 men thought they could get away with a break-in. But when police responded to a call about suspicious figures in hoodies with painted faces, they found something more bizarre than they could have imagined. Enter Matthew McNelly, 23, and 20-year-old Joey Miller, who apparently didn't have the money or the creativity to buy the typical ski masks or balaclavas. Instead, they opted for something more artistic. They streaked their faces with permanent black markers. They literally attempted to create a mask out of a Sharpie. But if you can imagine, or in the case of YouTube viewers see, they could not have possibly done a worse job. It looks like they shared the same Sharpie that was drying out in the middle of their drawing. They clearly weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. Get it? Carroll Police Chief Kahlua, who's seen his fair share of weirdness, couldn't help but chuckle when talking about it. He would say, quote, "We're very skilled investigators, and the black faces gave them right away. I have to assume the officers were kind of laughing at the time. I've never heard of coloring your face with a permanent marker," end quote. After all, it's not every day you see a pair of crooks trying to blend into the shadows with a Sharpie. The whole thing was apparently a case of poor judgment fueled by, I'm sure you guessed it, alcohol, and a personal vendetta. One of the men was feeling a little bit jealous over a romantic situation and decided to take matters into his own hands and scare the man he suspected was seeing his girlfriend. Or maybe he was his girlfriend's ex. I don't know. There's different reports. Also, apparently, they decided to burglarize the home. Maybe, or maybe they just wanted to cause mischief. Who knows? Chief Kahlua said, quote, "They probably weren't thinking straight. Combine that with some drinks, and it's the perfect storm for disaster," end quote. Well, I think that's pretty obvious, Chief Kahlua. Oh, and let's be clear. Once Matt and Joey got their courage up to leave the house, they'd had enough liquid courage that they could barely walk, much less make good decisions about what would be the best disguise. Anyway, the guys, once markered and liquored up, headed over to their target's apartment and attempted to break in. They couldn't get in and then escaped, but someone called the police, saying some guys were trying to break into an apartment who had painted faces. The caller also said that the pair were wearing dark, hooded sweatshirts and appeared to be armed, or maybe just wearing holsters. The caller also said they had driven off in a big white car. It wasn't long before police spotted a 1994 Buick Roadmaster, matching the description, and stopped it at gunpoint, just a couple blocks from where the attempted break-in happened. Remember, the caller said they might have been armed. Turns out it was Joey's car, and Matt and Joey were in the car, but neither had guns or even holsters. They did, however, have something on their faces. It was dark, but as soon as the cops pulled the guys out of the car, they realized what was going on. Both Matt and Joey were charged with attempted burglary, and Matt got an extra charge for driving while intoxicated as well. And he also had a probation violation. Come on, Matt, you were supposed to be keeping your nose out of trouble, not covered in marker trouble. Strangely, Joey did not get charged with an intoxicated minor or minor in possession charge because, remember, he was only 20. Either way, they did not let them wash their faces before their mugshots, so we have those for all of posterity. Some commentators called the Sharpie look the worst disguise ever. MSNBC's Willie Geist said, quote, "How about a Halloween mask? They're everywhere. It's not that hard. Permanent marker is literally the very last thing you would want to use to hide your identity while committing a crime. America, we can do better." End quote. And I haven't seen every disguise ever used, but I think I agree. As for Joey and Matt's lawyers, they declined to comment, which was probably a good idea. This story went viral, or like 2009 viral, and Chief Kaler found himself fielding calls from news outlets all over the country, many of which were more interested in the men's mugshots than the actual crime. He would say, quote, "In 25 years of being chief, this is the weirdest and funniest thing I've ever seen. Strangely weird and hilariously funny all at the same time," end quote. So while the men may not have succeeded in their heist, their face-painting blunder definitely gave Carroll, Iowa, its 15 minutes of fame. A week after the robbery on October 30th, the two faced Judge Christopher Polking. Matthew pled guilty to the probation violation and the DWI charge. The judge decided to dismiss the attempted robbery charges. There wasn't really any evidence to prove they were sober enough to actually break in. They just gave it a shot and failed miserably, or they probably weren't even trying to they were just trying to scare this guy. Plus, with no weapons involved and no one hurt, the judge felt there wasn't enough to justify the charges. He couldn't help but note with some relief that their marker disguises had washed off by then. As far as the judge was concerned, the combination of their hangovers and the humiliation of being dubbed America's worst disguised criminals was punishment enough. I don't know much about these guys today, and that's probably a good thing. Court records are public, and I'm not going to lie to you. I looked at them. I'm nosy. What can I say? I had to see if they learned their lesson and kept their nose out of the markers. And I'd say for the most part they did. They definitely never robbed anywhere again, or at least they did so with better disguises. Thanks for hanging out with me. I couldn't find any crimes that were quite as bad as this one, at least in terms of what they wore, so I guess Joey and Matt get a whole episode of their own. I hope they're doing well and keeping their faces away from Sharpies of all kinds. We're off next week, but in 2 weeks, we're headed to another one of those infamous triangles everyone's always so afraid of going into, the Michigan Triangle. Faithful Capers and Cocktails listeners probably remember the story from last season about a man who disappeared into the Michigan Triangle and found his way back out again. But there's a couple more stories of strange things happening between those 3 points, and we're going to dive into some of those spooky mysteries. We're diving into the water. Content warning, the upload next time does contain some deaths, or at least disappearances without the reappearances. So if that's not your jam, feel free to skip it. I'll always be here for you when you come back. I'll hopefully see at least some of you in 2 weeks. And remember, there are always alternatives to attempting to disguise yourself with a permanent marker when you're super trashed. That's it. That's the outro.